Peace, Chem family. It's me, BaNAuset KaNSekhmet, the naturopathic nurse for Kemetic Wellness Sacred Healing Center, and I'm back with another video. If you're new to the channel, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to be notified when I drop another video. I am a registered nurse with a BSN RN, and I help women of African descent to heal womb trauma holistically using ancient African wisdom. If you would like to work with me one-on-one, you can visit me on my website at www.kemeticwellness.com. So today's video, I'm going to be talking about slave food or soul food. Now this topic comes up because a lot of us who desire to make a change in our lifestyle and our nutrition, a lot of times feel like we can't do that without giving up parts of our culture and without giving up parts of ourselves. And that's actually not true, but I can understand why it is perceived that way. A lot of things that we perceive as being a part of our culture are actually not a part of our culture. They are adaptations of living in a hostile environment. And one doctor in particular by the name of Dr. Joy DeGruy, she talks about this in her discussion on post-traumatic slave syndrome. So let's break this down. Post-traumatic slave syndrome basically describes some of the behaviors that we see in the Black community that are a result of the things that we have experienced as a collective, whether it be slavery or colonialism. There are certain behaviors that we have in our community that are maladaptive and that are not a part of our culture, but we perceive it as a part of our culture. Food being one of those things. So a lot of what we call soul food is not actually soul food, okay? Soul food is supposed to elevate the soul. It's supposed to take you to a place of higher consciousness, which the foods that we call soul food do not do. Now, soul food originated in the southern United States with the foods that were given to the enslaved Africans by the white terrorists who owned them. Limited rations of food were given to those who were enslaved. Basically, these were scraps of the foods that the enslavers did not want. So typically an enslaved person would be given very limited rations of food, about 2 gallons or so of dry cornmeal, and maybe 3 to 4 pounds of pork or parts of the pig that the enslaver did not want. These rations gave birth to the soul food staples that we know of today. This includes cornmeal, barbecue ribs, neck bones, mixing meat with vegetables such as collard greens. That's why you'll see a lot of pork and collard greens. Chitlins is another common staple. And some of the foods that were commonly grown in the field, such as beets, dandelions, purslane, even sweet potatoes, things like that. Now, during the time of enslavement, this was actually very necessary for the enslaved Africans because they needed a very high calorie diet in order to be able to do high intense labor. Okay, so they were given these very, very fattening foods because they were very high in calories, and you needed those calories in order to be able to work. So what worked for us during those times is actually becoming a hindrance to us now. And so the food that we ate during those times, we just continued to eat the same things. You have to remember, after slavery happened, there was no help for us. There was no therapy for us. There was no rehabilitation for our minds for the things that we experienced. So oftentimes we just continued to do what we already knew. Now, you have to think about the fact that we continue eating these same foods, these same high fat, high calorie foods. But are we working out in the fields now? Most of us are not. So we're eating that fried chicken, fried pork, chitlins, all of these very, very high calorie foods, and then going to sit on the couch to watch television or going to play video games. So this fat is accumulating, making us overweight, obese, and also accumulating around the heart. And it fuels emotional eating because there are things that we've experienced during those times that were never dealt with, and there are things that we are still experiencing on a societal level, as well as on a family, nuclear family, personal level. And a lot of us are not thinking about the fact that what was once a help to us is now a hindrance to us in our health. It kept us alive for one period of time, but now it's actually killing us, and we are dying by food, nutricide, okay? Committing suicide by food. So I want you to think of it this way. If you were out in nature somewhere and you needed to get across a lake, you would use a boat to get across that lake. Now, once you have crossed the lake in that boat, you get on dry land and you have to continue on your destination. And the next step in your destination is to walk up a mountain. Does that mean that you take that same boat that got you across the lake and strap it to your back and try to climb up the mountain with it? No, at that point, it becomes a detriment to you. It becomes a hindrance to you, and it makes it impossible for you to move forward on your journey and on your mission. And that is what we are doing by consuming this so-called soul food. Okay? What we're calling soul food is actually slave food, and it is not doing us any good. A lot of us are dying, killing ourselves for lack of knowledge, because we have gotten stuck in this paradigm. We've gotten stuck in this tradition, which is really not a cultural tradition. It is an adaptation of living under hostile conditions. So what can you do instead? How can you still continue to eat foods that nourish you, but get that taste and that flavor that you're looking for? Well, what you can do is go back to your traditional African cultural foods. And I discuss a lot of this in my upcoming book, which is called High Vibration Nutrition. And I'm going to talk more about this in the next video. Even though we have been living off the continent of Africa for several hundred years, it takes over 2,000 years for the stomach culture of any group, any species to change. What does that mean? It means that wherever you are from ancestrally, the foods that are grown there are going to be what is best for your health. The foods that were eaten when you were in your natural environment are going to be best for your health. So some of those same foods that were eaten even during the time that we were enslaved, such as the collard greens, the beet greens, the beets, the purslane, all of these things, these are some of the same foods that we ate in Africa. However, the preparation was different. We used herbs in order to flavor our foods. There wasn't so much meat. We weren't putting artificial things into our foods. Things were cooked differently. Things were prepared differently. Even if you did eat meat, this was from animals that you grew yourself, not these GMO Frankenstein animals that have tumors cut out of them and then sold to you in packages in the grocery stores. Okay? It's not your mama's chicken, baby. Okay? Not your grandmama's chicken. You're getting a totally different beast. So you have to understand that. Some of you may be thinking, well, I don't know what part of Africa I came from, so how do I know how to eat exactly like they ate or as they eat currently? Well, it's fine that you don't know exactly where your lineage is from. there are certain staples throughout Africa that don't really change that much. There are certain grains that are eaten just as long as you stay as natural as possible and as close as possible to the foods that are grown there in Africa. You have a better chance of creating a nutritional lifestyle that is going to be more compatible with health for you. So in the book, I discuss a study that was done here in the United States. I forget exactly where off the top of my head, but in the study, they took a group of Africans in America, African Americans, and a group of South Africans. And what they did was they switched their diets. So Africans in America typically eat a SAD diet, a standard American diet. And Africans on the continent from South Africa typically eat a standard South African diet with the staple vegetables and staple grains that come from that area of the world. And they switched those diets. Now, what they noticed in the African Americans was that they started to show signs of health. They began to lose weight, and they also showed signs of improvement in certain health conditions. Now, the opposite happened for those South Africans who began eating a standard American diet. The researchers who did several different tests on them even began to see the signs of early stages of cancer development in the colon from eating a standard American diet. Now, this is just a study that was a few weeks, and they began to see those changes that quickly. So this is just an example to you of how important it is to eat a traditional cultural diet, to stick to an ancestral diet, and to avoid eating a standard American diet, a standard fast food American lifestyle diet at all costs. You want to stick as closely as possible to natural foods that are close in origin to the types of foods that you would be eating on the continent of Africa. It doesn't really matter as much exactly where that is. So for example, for myself, I am of Jamaican background. I am the first generation living here in the United States. And when I eat the foods that come from the Caribbean, I'm also eating a lot of the same foods that come from where Jamaicans originally come from in West Africa, which is very likely Ghana or Nigeria. So when I eat those natural foods from Jamaica, I am eating some of the same foods that were eaten in West Africa. Some of the same bananas, mangoes, pineapples, coconuts, soursop, plantains, okay, breadfruit, jackfruit. I went to Ghana in 2019 and it felt like home to me. Like, it felt like Jamaica. Everything from the smell of the air to the red dirt to the foods that they ate. I've noticed across different African cultures that we still take those foods with us. We prepare them in slightly different ways, but there's still some of the same staple foods. So you want to stick to the foods that are as natural as possible, that are as close as possible to the natural foods of Africa, of the continent of Africa. You can stick to West Africa, you can stick to South Africa. You can ask those of your background, your family background, where your family came from. Try to get as much information as you can, and you can get as close as possible to the foods of that origin. So that's it for this video. I hope this was helpful to you all. If you found it helpful, go ahead and hit the like button and share this video with someone who you know is having trouble giving up that slave food. Also, leave a comment in the comment section and let me know which of these slave foods or soul foods you feel is the hardest for you to give up. Let's see if we can come up with some alternatives in the comment section. I will see you all in the next video. Peace.